Hello, my fellow CS colleagues, and welcome back to another CS Stories with me, your CSS nerd, Sarah B. Cruz from Pre-Treat CSS. Big shout out to the Knowledge and Nonsense Network hosting this platform so we can just let it all hang out, talk about a flop, and keep it moving. So typically, I usually start the night with a professional flop, but I kind of want to change it up a little bit. And I'd like to discuss a term, setback. What do you think of when I say the term setback? The game? I'm not good at the game anyway. So if you're thinking about the game, then you've already beaten me. But when we think about a professional setback, a lot of the times we think of a discouraging moment, moment in time where things didn't go as planned, crack in the road, whatever type of philosophical or metaphoric way you want to describe a setback. The main common line is that we've all had them. And when we experience setbacks in that moment, it can feel so crushing, detrimental to our future selves. When we're in a setback, it's almost as if we won't push past it. It's our new permanent state. That's when we ask ourselves to either react or respond to a professional setback. But nobody realizes they're in a setback while they're in the setback. It's always easy to look back when, hindsight's 2020, but my hindsight, frankly, is not 2020, is probably 10-15. Left is better than right. I digress. When you're living in a setback, it's so hard to appreciate what's going to happen on the other side. Now, I'm not saying that we're meant to live in our professional struggles for the rest of our life. You don't have to be plagued professionally and struggle professionally in order to have achievement. But when you're in a setback, if we pause, 1, you'll notice we're in one. 2, you'll be able to respond. And 3, you'll be able to appreciate that it's only temporary. Now, just like a setback, unlike a setback, this show is not temporary. It's only a half hour long. And I know why you guys came today, okay? I love that you guys came. You let me usher you into a professional flop. So I am so excited to invite our guest on tonight. And if you want to talk about the abilities to be forthcoming and sincere, then this is your type of sterile processing professional. This week's CS Story guest is sure to show you how to incorporate those attributes in your professional presentation. She's a dynamic speaker, an industry representative, and frankly, one of the most down-to-earth sterile processing enthusiasts you'll ever meet. She's here to offer practical and professional practicality in your professional development. She exudes authenticity and genuineness online and in her approach to industry insight. Listen, I can go on and on and on about our guest tonight, but frankly, as Ascenco's client success manager, I want to welcome Allison Sonstally.
Hi.
Hey, girl. Hey.
That's like a really hard to live up to intro, so I hope I can do that. But no thanks, pressure. I appreciate it.
No, I think I'm so excited to have you. So just for full transparency, I already shared this with Allison, but the first time I met Allison was actually at a conference in Maine. That I live in Connecticut, so it was a little bit of a drive, but I drove all the way up to Maine to see my mentor speak and Allison speak. And I remember her walking on stage and she had leopard print loafers on and bright blue pants. And she was like the most phenomenal female that I had ever seen. And the presentation you delivered was so frank, so to the point. And I craved that in my professional development. So I am just so grateful that you're here today. And don't worry, you're going to live up to it anyways, because I see you online. I see you out there doing it. Like,
so I'm glad you like the look of the the bright blue pants and the leopard print shoes, because so I'm like, I am a tall woman, and like sometimes it's like I don't want to be too loud, but no, I'm like, no, we're putting on the leopard shoes today, the bright blue pants, and we're gonna I think that's just like my personality. I have a big personality, so it's.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember you coming to that show, and I thought that was so awesome that like, because I was like, she drove all the way here,
Yeah.
so and that's
And
just so great.
And I think that could almost be your professional like allegory, Allison. Leopard print like shoes with the blue pants. Like I love how like even in that space you were just standing authentically comfortable with yourself. And I have to know, and I'm going to cut to the chase, and here it comes, but the people they come in for one reason, and they need to know, what was one of your defining professional flops?
Well, okay, can I derail the conversation just right off the bat a little bit? So like, okay, so like I played basketball my whole life and played in college, and like I was just at the Minnesota Lynx game, so that's why my voice is all raspy because I was like shouting in the stands. But like when we talk about a flop, when hear flop, I think of basketball terms because I was what they would call a flopper. Because like even though I'm so tall, like I was still small for my position, and so like a flop is when you take like a charge or you draw an offensive foul, and it's all dramatic and like. So like I was a total flopper. So like when you say flop, that's the first thing I think of. Like, oh yeah, that's it. Like in basketball, it's like I was total flop artist. But so like
Flop artist.
yeah, it was like a con artist basically. Um so I think like my biggest flop, and like when you asked me to talk about this, like honestly it is hard to pick because I've had a lot of them. Like, but that's I think just what happens when you are like passionate about what you do and you want to try things and you want to like put yourself out there. Like you're not gonna be 100% on all the things that you want to do, and you're gonna fail. But like I think the theme of that is like you always have to try. So like you can flop, but you got to pick yourself up and you got to try again and learn from it. So I think when I was trying to reflect on what the biggest one was, so I know like if you're familiar with me and like if I've spoken and talked about like my past, like what I did for work, I was working in sterile processing. I took a manager role in supply chain, and then I went back to sterile processing. So like it was a promotion for me to go from sterile processing to supply chain. And then there were some mysterious happenings that led me back to sterile processing. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about today.
Yes.
Spill some tea a little bit, if
Yes,
you will.
I got some tea.
And like when I talk about this, like I have nothing but like respect and admiration for like everyone involved in these stories. And but you know, I was at this point when I was in supply chain, you know, I was starting to speak, I was starting to write, I was starting to work with like, you know, some different companies. And like running parallel to this, we had a conflict of interest thing going on with one of our surgeons. And so there was this like tightening up of like what we're going to allow or not allow like our employees to do. And so I was basically given an ultimatum, like you have to either pick one or the other. Like you can work here or you can do the things that you want to do outside of work, but not both. So at that point I was like, well, like did my pros and cons and weighed my options. And I was like, well, I'm just going to go. I'm going to leave the hospital. I'm going to like spread my wings and maybe I'll fall on my face or maybe like it'll work out, but that's my choice. And so I had like put in my notice, and I had sent out like my information because I was like the person in the hospital where someone needed something, like I was the one they went to. So like I had to let them know I'm leaving. And so what happened was I was told that I had to leave sooner because I had a speaking engagement coming up. And I needed to go. And like that was so devastating to me because I had already like communicated like this is my last day. I have these plans going on, you know, like had a plan to like leave gracefully, and then that was kind of like pulled out from underneath me. And I actually had, like, we were teaching these high reliability courses, and they were 4-hour long classes. And the person that I was teaching with was like kind of an executive level person. And I was supposed to have like a class on my last day of work that I was teaching. And so I like texted her and I was like, hey, I'm not be able to teach with you. I'm sorry. And she was sitting with some other like executive level people. And she was like, what is going on? And so they were like kind of swooped in and were like, we're taking you. We want you here. We want you to work in sterile processing. We want you to come back. We want you to stay. So that's how I ended up back. So it was like a whirlwind of a week. And like all of this was happening while I was at a 3M thing, like out in the woods, like on a lake. I was getting these phone calls and I was like, I don't know what's happening anymore. But it gave me a chance to like keep doing what I love to do. And, you know, it felt really good to have people like want me to stay, I guess. Like, so like that was really great to like, you know, have people have my back and want me to stay. But I just remember like that feeling, because I got that phone call like while I was getting ready for work, and I did the total classic like sobbing in the shower while I was getting ready, like and you know, it was like people like the supervisor team that I had, they were like planning a party, and it was like, I'm not going to go to my party. It was all like totally just, you know, it was a definite like low point. Like I remember that feeling and just being so like completely crushed by it. And like it was awful. I just felt so bad that at that point, and I was like, you know, what am I going to do now? Like I was already kind of like, what am I going to do now? And then I was like, you know, now what am I going to do? Like I wasn't like, it was embarrassing almost. And you know, I'm just at that point, I was just so thankful and so appreciative for, you know, those people that I had worked with that, you know, stepped in and had my back and, you know, wanted me to stay and found a place for me. And which was uncomfortable for me because, you know, I kind of felt like, you know, I didn't like deserve that, or like didn't, it's almost like I felt guilty about it. You know what I mean? Like, you had to take me in, and, you know, I didn't, which no one made me feel that way, but that's just kind of how I felt, just for whatever reason. But, you know, I just, again, like so appreciative of, you know, that team and the sterile processing team. You know, we had worked together in the past, and it was kind of like, I'm kind of a bull in a china closet. So it was like, Allie is coming back. Like, what's she going to do? Like, what's she going to do to my stuff? But, you know, I was like, you know, in my time in supply chain, I had grown up. I'd grown up a lot, to be honest. Like, I learned a lot, you know, working in that role. And again, like, I have no like hard feelings or anything. I am also appreciative of that team because, you know, and I'm still friends with a lot of people, and I learned a lot of lessons like doing that. And you know, so it was all ended up being a positive thing, but just in that very moment, it was like, just crushed my soul, you know? So it was like,
yeah. I mean, and I can see it. And, you know, just watching the reminiscence and going back into that professional flop, because we've moved forward from it, just putting yourself back in that space, I can see how much it affects you. But there was so much that you shared in that, from imposter syndrome to rose-colored glasses, that we're going to unpack after the break, because Allison, you gave us some gold and I can't wait. So after this commercial break, we'll figure out what you did next.
Those in the know SIPS Consults. SIPS Consults is hiring. Confident, competent, and consistent. Starting as a consultant and a volunteer, SIPS has grown into a dynamic group of stellar sterile processing professionals, offering excellent benefits, 401k, and consultant in training program. We are hiring certified technicians, leads, supervisors, interim managers, educators, coordinators. Apply at recruiting@sipsconsults.com or dial 1-866-615-7977.
All right. Thank you guys for sticking around after the commercial. And I am super excited to see that SIPS is hiring. I've definitely attended a few of their events, not to mention Scrub Ball in 2021. And tickets are available for Scrub Ball 2022 if you guys are interested in that awesome party that's coming down the pike. Be sure to follow SIPS Consultants on all of their social media and follow the amazing hashtags cited below, and make sure you guys come up. I wore a dress. I was feeling very Kim Kardashian. So you guys can imagine that. No leopard print pants, but I had a good time. Leopard print shoes, yeah. But Allison, I think that you spoke on something that really resonated with me just near the end, just before we went to commercial break. You know, it almost sounded like you were tiptoeing into this idea of imposter syndrome, where it's like, why would they want me back? Like, I was the bull in a china shop, and and now they're going out of their way to help me. And it's interesting when we start to think about the debt that we feel we owe ourselves to gain that type of professional development. It's almost like we're moving from a deficit before we can move into the positive aspects. And I think you really highlighted that. Like, I told you, authentic, like raw moments of authenticity, extremely present. And I really like how you touched on this idea that we shouldn't rose-colored glasses our flops, dare I say, where you kind of put a pair of rose-colored glasses on and it's not that bad. I would say that does a huge disservice. So I appreciate the level of depth and sincerity that you shared in your flop. So I think that's great. So thank you for just that raw honesty and that vulnerability that came with it. I'm really happy to hear that everybody was on good terms and that you moved into that position. And what, after you transitioned from your flop to that new space there, after you got through the temporary setback, what were some of the biggest moves you made first?
Well, okay, so it was hard. I'm not gonna, I mean, it wasn't like, it was hard in that it was like, Allie's coming back and like, where is she going to sit in this office? And like, what is she going to do? You know what I mean? Like, it was like physically and like mentally for people that I was like going to be working with. It was like, and it was so sudden, like coming back on Monday, you know what I mean? Everyone move your stuff.
Hi.
And so it was like that I was very aware of. And then it was also like, I knew that I was, like I said, a bull in a china shop before. And it was like, okay, I'm not that way anymore. Right. I'm like sensitive to the fact that like, I have to move, like everything is like shuffling around because I'm coming back. And like, I already feel awkward about it. So it's like being just like very open and honest and upfront with people. Like, I'm coming back. This is where I'm going to be. This is what I plan on doing. Like, I'm not going to like mess with your stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to interfere with what you're doing. And I'm here and like, we'll work through this. Like, what can I help you with? So like, that was kind of the first step, was just like trying to like gently like work my way back in there instead of just like, sliding into home plate head first, like I would have done like 6 years before. So like that was kind of the first step. And then it was just like, it's stuff that I was like kind of second nature to me. Like my job wasn't really any different. So like, it wasn't like I had to learn a new skill or like, figure out like how everything worked. And, I had to meet some new people and I had to kind of like get caught up with things, but like, it was mostly just like trying to find my place again and trying to like fit back in without like ruffling everyone's feathers.
Okay.
And, like, so that was really like step one, is just like getting in and getting comfortable.
And
And
would
then,
you say
sorry.
that that's how you would define, you said previously that you had grown up a lot.
Yeah.
Is that what you were using to define that moment, that grownness there, that adultism? Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah. And that had happened like a few years before, because
Okay.
it's the job, like I had to, like, it was a hard job that I was
Mhm.
doing, and I needed to really, like, take the sandpaper and really kind of like sand off some of the rough edges.
Okay.
With,
I like that.
without like completely losing my identity.
Mm.
So like that's
Mhm.
always the fine line to walk, right? Is like, how do I still like stay my authentic self without like, upsetting people? My leopard shoes and blue pants. Like that, you know what I mean? So it's like that's hard. And like
Mm.
I feel like a lot of people end up losing themselves that way.
Mm. Yeah, and
So
it's like if we're showing up professionally, you know, authentically themselves, I think that a lot of the times people defer to this statement that's like, well, this is how I am, and that's me being authentic. And
mm,
I would challenge to say, no, that's not necessarily what being authentic is really about.
right.
You can 100% be yourself and make sure that you serve yourself in your presentation. Challenging that space where, are you really just acting like this because it's you, or because you're trying to preserve an idea of how you
Mhm,
think you want to carry yourself?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really, I think, when I talk about like growing up,
Mm,
like that's really what I think that means, is like, how do you how do you maintain like who you are and your identity, but also like how do you be professional, and how are you like courteous of
right.
others, and how are you like more mindful of that?
Mm,
And that's not like an easy thing to learn. And so it took me a while to do that. So like when I came back, I was like, okay, like I've grown up, and so like now I can like be helpful and productive, and I can help you guys however you
mhm,
want me to help you. You know,
mhm.
and I can still do the things that I'm skilled at, and I can, like make a difference and do the things I like to do, and I don't have to like worry about shrinking myself down into like a more digestible thing, because I'm doing it the right way. Like
Yes.
tactfully.
And I love that, and it's like, if I am hard to swallow, take a smaller bite, maybe,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? So, and I think that's great how you personified the growing up, and, I think you almost summed it up with just that last sentence there when you said that, I asked them how I could help them instead of telling them what they needed,
Oh yeah, yeah. And
right?
like again, when I went, I, you know, I do not consider myself to be some sort of expert, like I know how to do things better than somebody. Like
Mhm,
that is not at all like how I perceive myself. Like I want to contribute to the team. And like
mhm,
the team already was doing everything like excellent. So like it was just, how can I fit in and how can I help do things more efficiently, or
mm.
make little improvements, because like I said, they were already at like such a high level. So it was like I can just come in
Mhm,
and, I'm just part of the big machine. So it was great. Um, and I think the biggest part of like the growing up was that I had so many like wonderful mentors around me
mm.
that helped kind of guide and shape me into the person that I am now. And like I'm not done. Like I still have a lot of things I need to work on and fix. But like I had so many, like the people that I, reported to directly, I had mentors that like were people that I just worked with on projects and stuff and gave me feedback, but I was also open to hearing that feedback and trying to apply it. So, but like none of that would happen if I hadn't had those people around me that helped me. And so, yeah. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am now. And, even in my role outside of the hospital, like, that's kind of what prepared me to make the leap out of the hospital was, all of that like servant leadership to like kind of push me out the door.
And I think that's really exciting. And I want to dive deeper into how you took that leap from leopard loafers to leather Converse high tops right after this commercial break. Let's go indeed. And we are back with CS Stories with me, Sarah B. Cruz, and our amazing guest, Allison Stanstely. Thanks for sticking with us this long. And if you've hung out, now you're going to receive the fruits of your labor. We learned about Allison's professional flop, that gray area and transition from you're out, you're in, you're out, you're in, to figuring out what we're going to do when we get back into her presentation today. Allison, how did that gray area and figuring out where you fit in and how you want to show up professionally, how did that transition to what you're doing now?
I think, just the ability to kind of like adapt on the fly and like being able to take the things like the hard lessons that were learned and be able to like say, okay, I learned this lesson and like it's happening again, and instead I'm going to do this, like learned once the hard way, and then I'm not going to let it happen again. Helped me get from that point to there. And then, my experience in my role in the hospital really just allowed me to learn a lot of things that, transitioned really nicely into my current role that I have now at Asenco. And I know like I wasn't even like really particularly looking to leave the hospital, but
I love when that happens.
This happened, and I felt again like, because I have I felt guilty leaving because so the people that like welcomed me back in with open arms, and then I was like I was back for like 2 years and then left again, and I think it was the right choice. But I remember one thing that was like very interesting to me when I was doing my interviews at Asenco was that Brian Reed, who is, our leader, our fearless leader, had said to me, like, I know you're really good at the things you're doing now, but we're going to make you better. And so I was like, hey, you know what? Yeah, sold me hook, line, and sinker. You can tell he's like former sales, right?
I'm sold.
I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, I was sold a product. But I mean, so it's really, I think at the end of the day, it's really surrounding yourself with people that, are going to be honest with you and help you get better and help you improve, and being willing to take that feedback or asking for that feedback. And then, really applying that into, what the next thing you're going to do. So like, this all happened to me yesterday. Today, this, I can apply it in this way, and it's going to make this thing I'm trying to do a whole lot easier. Like, I learned from my mistake, and I'm going to go forward and do it this way instead. Is really like the best way to do it. 'Cause there's going to be times where you fail, especially if you're like really trying to push the envelope and do new things, do cool things that no one else has done. You're gonna have that flop. And so it's like, being able to pick yourself up and continue on and try the next cool thing. And like, hey, tried that way, I'm gonna try it this way instead. So I think that's like the biggest learning lesson is, just, it's going to happen. You're going to fail, and just making sure you learn as much as you can from it, and having people to lean on and ask for feedback.
I like how you highlighted this idea of not just pushing through onto the next thing, but you were very much a big proponent of there will always be a next thing. Learning in that moment so you can get to your next thing is not the same as just pushing through, because you're doomed to repeat the things you don't learn from. Believe me, I've learned this lesson, and I'm still learning this lesson because, some people call it stubborn. I call it a slow learner, tomato. I digress. So it's like, but I think this mindset that if we keep remembering that we are not necessarily ever done professionally developing, and just the fact that Brian was able to say, hey, I see that you're great, but we're going to make you better. That personifies that moment there. And I just think that's phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, another thing too is like, even if you try something new and it was successful, like there's still like, there's little things where if you reflect back on it, it's like, this was good. I want to do this the next time. But like, this part was really hard, and I got to fix that the next time I try something like this. So I think a lot of it is like self-reflection and like, how can I be better? Even if it's just like small incremental, we're going to move the dial a little bit every time. Like, that is so much better than just being stagnant and saying like, it worked for me this way, and this is how I'm going to keep doing it. Like, if you want to grow, you got to keep trying, you got to keep improving, and, and then I think like at some point, and I feel like I'm getting like close to this point, like, how do I share that with people? How can I be the mentor with the sandpaper that's like, no, like, try it this way instead. Like, this is a little bit more effective for you,
a gentle push.
Yes, the gentle nudges. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's, I think, there's a lot of people that are in that same boat too, where it's like, they've been successful. And it's time to like share some of that, and they may not know how or the right way to do it, but like, you got to start. And however that is, whether it's like a new person coming in or someone you want to mentor in your department, or you want to write about it, or like go on the road and speak, share that idea with other people. I always feel like if, someone can find a way to improve things like in their department, I feel like they have a responsibility to share that with other people, because it's great that like you found a way to keep your patients safe in your facility and like be better. But like, there's patients, there's everywhere. And that's like what it's all about. Like, if I'm at work, if back in the hospital, I'm not just thinking about like, the 50 cases we're doing at our place throughout the day. Like, I wanted to like, hey, we're going to fix this problem, and then we're going to share it with everybody, because then everybody can do it, and everybody can have that like safe experience for the patients that are coming in and doing surgery. So like, that's like, I feel like you can't keep that stuff to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have an idea, you're listening and you know, like, I have a way to do things, like, please share that with people. Please, like, share it with your network or your peers or whoever, because it's like your call to action, my challenge to you.
And listen, we told everybody when we started that you were going to give us practical, applicable, and very upfront, blunt ways to add types of professional development in their growth and in the way that they present themselves professionally. And frankly, Allison, I never doubted it, but I think you delivered today. All right.
Thanks.
Yes, girl, you brushed the dirt off, right? So I think it's amazing. And I really like how you're leaving us with the idea that growth can only come from a flop. And that active challenge that we've made to our industry to share a growth moment in their success by being completely uncandid and behind the screen. I love it. I couldn't end on a higher note. Allison, thank you so much for joining us today. I love these little half-hour sessions. I hate when they end so quickly, and I am so looking forward to seeing you speak coming up in the Minnesota chapter conference. I'll see you there. And next week, my fellow CS colleagues, my CSS nerds that are still hanging out with me, not next week. The next show we're going to have is actually going to be during sterile processing week. And we're going to have Damian Berg on the show. He's going to be discussing how he is reaching out to different ISHM chapters to try and develop growth and create staying power within that space. And also how he is using that professional development and where he started to get to where he is now. So I'm excited. See you guys during sterile processing week. If I don't see you before then, you're the real MVPs. Bye.
Bye.